Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1193 of our daily content grind. So, this is the first time in a long time I've actually had to come up with something different for a Tuesday. You have no idea, like as a daily content creator, you have no idea, unless you've done it yourself, you have no idea how nice it is to have a fixed format for a specific day where you know, just like, I know this is what I'm going to do. So I don't have to think up any topic. I don't have to scramble to make anything like over involved. I don't have to figure out what my routine's going to be. It's just there. You know, I just know Tuesday's coming up. We're going to do the next top 10 of the next year. You know, it gets nice and routine, and you know, it's one of those things that keeps me from, like, people asking me, like, how? How have you done so many videos in a row? How do you keep this up without burning out? Well, a big secret to not burning out is having stuff like this prepared and planned so that I don't really have to think about it very much. So it gives my brain a little bit of a break, you know? Monday is the same way. It's kind of why I decided Tuesday was going to be the top 10 day, because like, yeah, I never get a day off, but here 2 days back to back, I don't really have to think about what I'm going to be doing. So that is actually one big way of taking my brain out and like turning it off for a little bit. You know, even though I'm still outputting something. So in that context, yeah, it's been pretty pretty relieving to do like this series. And now we've come to the end of it. You know, now like all 40 years of the 40 of Transformers existence has been covered. You know, and we are currently in the 41st year. So for those wondering, like, well, you got to do 2024 now, right? Well, obviously I'm going to do 2024, but that's going to work a little bit differently, and we'll talk about that toward the end of the video. For now, I kind of just want to look back at what we've actually done here, because this is one of my longest projects ever. You know, like, there's no, like, I've done like 31 videos in a row for Toycember, but those are mini reviews. You know, those are not big deals to do. This took a year. This took almost the entire year to pull off. You know, and it was my way of celebrating the 40th anniversary of the franchise, and I'm extremely proud of how it came out. I'm very proud that I managed to make it all the way to the end. So we're going to talk about it and think about it just a little bit. We're going to reflect back. We're going to reflect back a little bit. I think the biggest takeaway from doing this whole project all year is just the sheer amount that I had to go through. So you think about this. You really think about this here. In order to actually pull this off, to actually go over and say these are the 10 best toys of every year of the Transformers franchise, you know, I had to cover literally everything. Every Transformer toy in the last 40 years had to be considered. You know, I would go on Wiki. I would punch in the date, and I would look through the list and go, oh my god, there's so many toys to think about. And I would have to I would have to like mess around in my brain long enough to go, that's good, that's bad, that's good, no, 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 no. Literally thousands and thousands of toys to consider and think about in order to tell you what the, and we're to basically talk about 400 of them. I think that's absolutely insane to realize just the breadth of work that it would take to actually do, you know, and just the mental energy to come up with to go through so many toys. That alone makes me really proud of this project, you know, like, just to sit back and think, like, you know what, yeah, like, I have had to at least consider every single Transformer toy ever made. That's insane to me. That alone makes this an insane project. And the scary thing is, I know I haven't even covered all of them. Oh, I know I didn't even cover all of them. That's the scariest part about the whole thing. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, yeah, it's a big breadth of work. And like I said, like, it's a way of, like, kind of giving me, like, a way of going, like, this is something you know you're going to be doing, so you don't really have to think about it that hard, all right? So It is something of a mental break, but there is a lot to consider in the same time. There's mental energy going into it, even though, like, I didn't have to come up with it. And there's a lot of years that were a lot of fun to talk about. I like going back to, like, the original, like, the G1s and figuring out, in 1994 standards, what was the best? Or 1984 standards, what was the best? Speaking of, like, early 90s, I think that's where some of the most fun was. And for you guys too, because, like, we know that there are those dark ages where, the only Transformer toys coming out are just a few things in Europe or Japan. And one year it was literally just Europe. I had one year in this list where, like, there were literally only 11 or 12 toys produced the entire time. I think I had one year, I want to say I had one year where there were only 11 brand new toys released, and I had to mention the last one. Like, it wasn't a list of, like, here's the 10 best of the year. It was, here's every toy of that year except for the worst one. And those are the interesting thought projects. What makes for the best toy of the year, and how do you categorize them when you have so few to talk about? And inevitably, you're going to have a lot of toys that feel very much the same. They're on the same level. Like, even that number 11 spot probably doesn't feel like it should be in there compared to everybody else. So, like, how do I determine what the only bad toy of the year was? And it's a chance to actually discuss some of the weirder things that we don't normally talk about. We got to talk about the Battle Stars, for instance, which are all the rage right now because we have Star Optimus Prime on the way next year. But it's not a topic or a section of Transformers I really get to go over. So when I look at that, and I think to myself, wow, we actually, like, we got to talk about a lot of really weird stuff, like Euro G1. I've talked about here and there in the past, but, doing the Here's 10, we get to go through a much larger, like, spans of it. And we got to talk about nearly every figure that came out, which was crazy to me. So those years were a lot of fun, Like, those are actually way less pressure than, like, the years where we had a movie line, a collector's line, the masterpiece line, the generations line. It's like stack upon stack upon stack where I have so much to think about. Those were the hard years. Those were the hard years. Another aspect I liked about this was getting to experience a lot of toys that I normally don't. So, for the record, I don't own Masterpiece Jetfire. In fact, there's quite a few toys, especially in the Masterpiece realm, that I don't actually own but definitely deserve a spot on this list. This is where running a toy shop really does come in handy. I have regulars who are collectors of this kind of thing, so every now and then, like, I would realize, like, okay, I'm coming up to a year where I wasn't in the Masterpiece, didn't really buy or experience anything, but it's not fair of me to include them in a top 10 if I haven't messed with it or at least seen it in person. So, I have regulars that I have the numbers or contact of, and I just, like, hit them up and go, can you bring in Jetfire? Because I'd really just like to experience that toy before we get to this year. And that's really the only way I was able to include a lot of those Masterpiece releases that otherwise I thought were either too expensive or just not my usual purchase. I'm thankful to everyone out there who did. I mean, that was a huge help. Thank you very much. And it's one of those things where maybe you go, like, maybe I do need to go back and get Masterpiece Jetfire. How much is he now? Too much. That's how much he is now. Maybe a reissue. Maybe wait for a reissue, because Jetfire is one of those where it's like, you don't really have a repaint, Mr. Fire. Unless they get some crazy deal with Macross. And something absolutely insane happens. No, you are not going to get another use. So maybe you'll see him again down the line. I'm probably going to pick him up down the line. I didn't mention it before, but, like, another thing is just, like, shout out to TF Wiki for making that entire series possible. Figuring out what actually came out in each year. I understand there were a few years where there were borderline things that came out in November or December for some people, but January, February for others. I tried to go by sighting date in the US. And if there was something that was riding the line, I would go and double check. Like I would go search TFW and go like, where's the news that cited this wave? So I try, but I do know there might be a little bit of bleed over. I don't think it's too bad. I know when I did the original top 10 for 2022 and 2023, I know I got some things wrong. I know I want to say like one of my top toys of one of those lists was actually from the previous year, and I completely botched the whole thing. Which is another reason why I was okay redoing those lists, not only because I was doing different rules, but because I know I screwed up a couple times. So I'm going to go back and fix that error by just redoing this entire thing. And I'm kind of glad I did. Not only because like it let me correct myself, but also because obviously my taste changed. We were using different criteria for that particular series. A lot of things. A lot of things that like made me okay with like going back and seeing it again. But yeah, like the TF Wiki made this entire project possible. Even if I got dates wrong a few times, keep in mind, everyone involved in this is human. We're going to make mistakes. I tried to be as consistent as I possibly could. That said, I do know I missed a few things, and that is very upsetting to me. When I have to go and consider thousands upon thousands of toys over the years, yes, there are absolutely things that are going to slip through the cracks, and they're not going to be on the list even though they deserve to be. The one that sticks out the most in my head is the leader scale Optimus Prime they did for RID 2015 in Japan. I almost put the Warrior class Optimus Prime on my list for that year because I love what it does. I really like an Optimus Prime that is a full like truck and trailer, and then goes straight into the robot mode, similar to how I like my Ultra Magnus. And I really do like that Warrior class figure, but ultimately I just felt there were too many good figures that year to really include a Cyberverse Warrior class, and it wasn't enough bang for my buck for me to change my mind on that. But this toy was basically everything that design should be. It's got the big hollow legs, but that's so it can fit a vehicle. That means the trailer is actually useful. It's not only does it become Prime's legs, it's actually doing the thing it's supposed to do. And then you've got light up gimmicks. You've got great articulation. It's very similar to the big Optimus that they did for Transformers 1 in Japan. Similar to that vibe. And, I like when Japan does that, and I'm just, like, a little bit foolish for missing this one out. I really do. And I know there are others. I know there are others where people are, like, correcting me in the comments going, like, where is this toy? This deserved to be it. And a lot of times it comes down to personal preference. A lot of times it is a toy that I knew about, but maybe I'm just not... It didn't hit me the same way it hit you. Which brings me to another thing that came up a lot, is people telling me my list was wrong. I had a lot of comments on Armada, Legacy Armada, Starscream especially, and a lot of it came down to, well, his joints are loose, etc., etc., etc. I'm sorry you got a bad QC one, and I know there are figures with common QC issues, but honestly, mine was fine. Like, if mine had the same QC issues, they were not severe enough to detract how much I enjoyed the toy. And that was true of a lot of figures, Here's the thing. I think a lot of people got way too serious about this. It's my list. It's my opinion, and it's my personal preference. Yes, I'm trying to be as objective as possible and tell you, like, I genuinely feel like these are the best 10 toys of that year. But at the same time, ultimately, it comes down to what I like in a toy. So, yes, there's going to be entries in there that you are not going to agree with. But to come in the comment section and say, like, oh, well, like, this list is so wrong. No, it's not. Because it's my opinion. My opinion is, like, objectively not wrong. It's just my opinion. and it's not the same as yours. That's it. That's the only thing. So in that, yeah, I think a lot of people got way too bent out of shape over some of these lists. Like, I understand if you don't like it. I understand if you don't agree with me, but don't flat out tell me I'm wrong, because, you know, in my view, you're wrong too, because that's how opinions work. They're different, but they are 100% us, meaning they are inherently not wrong. So just calm down. One thing that a lot of people also suggested: top 10 worst toys of every year of the decade. So there's a few reasons I don't want to do this. One, between the top 5 I did for Plastic Addict back in the day and the more recent video I did a few years ago about the worst toys in Transformers, period, my response to all of those, like, clickbait sites going, pretending to be an expert on this franchise, when they're putting pretenders on the list, like low-hanging fruit, guys. I've done this a lot. And yeah, there's always going to be room to talk about the bad in Transformers. I always feel like you have to acknowledge the bad so you can appreciate how good we have in other figures. That was the whole point of Plastic Addict. But honestly, there's just so many years where I don't have enough toys to actually do this. Like we talked about this. There's some years where I only had 11 or 12 toys to pick from total. So I really don't have any room to talk about the absolute worst, of that year when, we'd be talking about the exact same toys in a different order. That's not interesting. And ultimately, there's some of those years I'd be putting down toys that frankly don't deserve it. So no, that is not a project we are going to be doing. Also, the one thing I regret about the whole format and the whole project is it kind of held the top 10 format hostage for a year. I have Patreon requests that ask me to do top 10 lists, and some of them I modified in order to do during the last year, but there are others where, like, yeah, it really should be a top 10. So this means that, like, that's going to be wide open to do again. And if I want to do a top 10 of something else in the realm of Transformers, we can now talk about that, right? So now I'm happy that the format is wide open again. It's not going to be one of those videos that I have to do every Tuesday. While it's a nice relief to my brain, it does open me up to being able to do whenever and whatever. And that, I think, is not a bad problem to have. So no, we're not going to do worst 10 of every year. This was a project for the 40th anniversary. The 40th anniversary is almost over. So we're going to move on from this, and we are going to be doing different things. We're not entirely done, however. There are a lot of toys that just did not get mentioned because of the main rule of the lists. No repaints, no retools, first run molds only. Because I wanted it to be specifically things released in that year for that year. So now we have room to go back and actually honor the things I did not cover. I think next week's video on Tuesday is going to be a rundown of what I feel like are the best repaint and retooled toys of every year. One video where I spend just like 30 seconds, just really quick. I don't have to tell you why, like, Starscream is the best repaint of 1984. We talked about, how nice the Seeker mold was back then. So, some of it's going to be a quick little mention. Some of it's going to go into a little bit of detail. Might end up being a half-hour video. I don't know. But I want to actually show a little bit of love to those toys that actually are retools and repaints, etc. So they aren't completely left out of, like, what the best was. So that's going to be my way of doing, like, one last loose thread to tie up. And then people ask me, well, now you have to do best of 2024. You're right. Yes, I do. And for the best of 2024, what I'd really like to do is retire the Here's 10 format and leave it as is. Like, I think that project is a great way to finish that off and either maybe still call it Here's 10. Because the whole idea behind Here's 10 is it's not a strict format of, like, top 10. Number 1 isn't necessarily the best example. It's just here's 10 things. So I might want to keep that, or I might want to just make it a proper top 10. I have not decided yet. But I'd like to redo the overlay. I'd like to redo the graphics. I'd like to redo the intro. Now that you've seen that intro and all those numbers and everything, literally every week for the last year, I think this is an opportune time to switch it up and freshen things out, right? So hopefully, if all goes according to plan, 2 weeks from now, I believe, as of this recording, literally the last day of the year. Perfect time to actually do the top 10 of 2024. And all bets will be off because we are not doing this as part of the 40th anniversary celebration. It's literally everything on the table. Reprints, retools, first run molds. We'll still do the bang for your buck scale, but everything is open. Because frankly, I'm already thinking of one toy on the list that is absolutely a retool, but I love it so much more than the original. It's going to be on the list. I don't care. So that's going to be it. That's the look back at the longest video project I have ever done. And I thank everyone for going through that entire thing with me. If you tune in on every single one of them all year, then you are one of the real ones. I deeply appreciate you. And who knows, to come up with more top 10s, I will admit, I'm not great at thinking of top 10 topics. So if anyone wants to leave ideas in the comments below, please do. I would very much appreciate it. If anyone wants to throw me a donation on Patreon to make me talk about a top 10 that they want to, go right ahead. That is open. But there it is. That's my look back at the biggest project I've ever done. And hopefully next year, unless it all gets delayed again, you'll see the new biggest project that I've ever done, which if you watch the credit sequence, you'll see the teaser for. But thank you everyone for watching. As always, I deeply appreciate it. And as always, I will see you next time.
Analysis complete. Adapting translators to local language.
Are you out there?